So, inside the Lords this week, I've just come out from doing a debate on public service broadcasting. And I have to say that if the sycophancy that I had to listen to in terms of a defence of the BBC is anything to go by, with friends like that, all I can say is the BBC are doomed. There was some perfectly good speeches, there were some perfectly interesting points made, but by and large, the speeches were of the nature of anyone who criticises the BBC is some kind of, right-wing shill and so on and so forth. They had no concept at all that the public might have some qualms about the fact that they've been treated badly by mainstream media. So I'm in one of those moods where I just think, oh my God, those people, they've got not a clue. So that's interesting. I obviously managed to rant on and, go over time and all that. But I think it's also interesting that I do get the chance to have these conversations, and then informally afterwards, there was a lot more people agreeing with me, which is, of course, like what politics and life is like. We've also been this week discussing quite a few bits and bobs around COVID. Nothing as dramatic as the Dominic Cummings revelations, which were obviously next door. And in fact, people seemed fairly unfazed by it. But I think it's important to note that Dominic Cummings revealed in the midst of his discussion the 7-hour-long selling out of everybody he's ever worked with. He did reveal the way that technocracy works, which is that he genuinely thinks that the best way that you could run this country is to have experts in charge like him and people who understand data and algorithms and evidence. And it's a really unpleasant insight for somebody who's associated with the slogan "Take Back Control," that obviously that was a very superficial slogan for him. I actually think that Boris Johnson might have even come out of it rather better by the indication of the fact that although he's a blundering around guy who probably shouldn't be the Prime Minister, at least he had some qualms about locking everyone down, and at least he was worried about the odd bit of stealing of civil liberties and freedom. But anyway, that's the kind of Westminster bubble for you. I think the most interesting thing that's happened in the Lords, actually not just this week but over the last few weeks, is there has been a rumbling rebellion by some of the Lords around something called valuing others. You may have read about it in the newspaper, it may have passed you by. Valuing others is a course that everybody in the Lords has to do, and when I did it, I did it as an online Zoom course. It's one of these, make sure that you don't sexually harass anyone, don't say the word girl, don't say anything unpleasant about people. You can imagine what condescending, patronising nonsense it is. And I did it because I was new, and I thought I'd better do all the courses, just like I did health and safety and, all of those kind of issues. But they've since made it mandatory. You have to do it. And 60 members of the House of Lords didn't bother. Lord Heseltine, Betty Boothroyd, and various other dignitaries either were too ill or doing something better, or just thought, why would I have to do a valuing others course? Betty Boothroyd, I'm the most important female parliamentarian alive of my generation, and she's been disciplined. And it all ends up that the disciplinary procedure and the conduct body has 4 lay people on it, and it's the only Lords committee that's not self-regulating but has non-Lords people on it, and it's run by Lord Mance, and it's like being at university. That's all I can say. Now, the reason I've enjoyed it is because it's ludicrous that they're disciplining people. They don't actually know how to discipline them, but they are disciplining them, and that can mean that you are, by the way, excluded from the House of Lords, as close as you're going to get to be sacked. And the outrage that at least some of the older, more established Lords have expressed, where they've realised one absolute indignity and affront to people's agency and common sense, that you can't be trusted to conduct yourself without doing a course put on by paid NGO, advisors on making sure that if you don't do this course, that somehow that will mean that you will harass people. Their outrage has been enjoyable because I've used it as an opportunity to talk to them about what the real world's like, because they haven't got a clue. And then when you kind of say to them, this is what's happening in workplaces, this is a bit like unconscious bias training, it's exactly the same kind of model as that, or compulsory consent lessons in universities for, you know, young adults. And if you don't do them, that somehow you are ridiculed and demonized and seen to be almost something dodgy about you, that you won't do it. The fact that Betty Boothroyd is on the receiving end of it has given some of them pause for thought, and it will be interesting when the online safety bill comes up and is discussed, because I can use this to explain that some of the issues that they maybe are not as familiar with are not just made up, you know, stories from tabloid newspapers. So I've found that interesting. But I have felt all week that I've been here, what am I doing here? I have to say, because it's felt very far removed from the real concerns of ordinary people and the real world, despite my trying to find some amusement in the fact that I have to sit in there for hours. Last week I reported that wearing masks had been brought in as guidance, and there was a bit of a half the chamber didn't wear masks. They have now today made it mandatory. You have to wear masks in the chamber. And that again has infuriated people, but everybody's doing it, including me. And then you realise that this is a world apart. So what has been a really nice reminder is I've been thinking very long and hard about what we're doing at the Academy of Ideas. Our first Battle of Ideas live event is going to be on July the 17th, and you can buy tickets now on Education and Freedom. And I think when you look at the way that Batley School has now said that the teacher can go back today, but he's never allowed to show the image of the Prophet Muhammad in his lesson, the real fights that are going on around issues, not just in terms of schools, but in terms of education and free speech, the ludicrous attempts at silencing university lecturers, some of the really horrible ways that anyone who raises any objection to the government on COVID policies, never mind Dominic Cummings, but if the rest of us do it, we're accused of being COVID deniers. Free speech, real politics is what I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into. So I really hope that you will all check out the Battle of Ideas website, buy your tickets, because we just need to get organised. We can't let Parliament think that they run things, because they genuinely haven't a clue. And if Dominic Cummings taught us nothing else, it's that. The way that politics will be shaped is when ordinary people re-emerge into the public sphere and start saying, we're not going to take that anymore, we now demand this, and get organised. So I'm hoping that what the Academy of Ideas is doing with the Battle of Ideas is just the start of us getting stuck into that. We're off on a week's recess next week, and I'm going to be reading, thinking and being involved in politics that has nothing to do with sitting in a parliamentary chamber. My final thought is that I'm really pleased to say that GB News is about to launch on I think it's the 13th of June. It's not that I have any great expectations for GB News, but having just sat through that public service broadcasting, festival of unapologetic BBC is the only possible thing that you can possibly watch. I think we all need to have fresh ideas, get out of our echo chambers. I really wish GB News well and hope that they are a challenge to the mainstream and shake things up, because what we need to do now is shake things up politically. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I will be on GB News, and lots of people from the Academy of Ideas will no doubt be guests on GB News one way or another, and on the BBC. But what we must never do is just become complacent like some of the speeches I heard today.